All right, Michael Quinn Sullivan here at the Texas Scorecard booth on our stage, visiting with U.S. Representative Chip Roy, who is often described as one of the most conservative members of the United States House of Representatives, which I'm not sure is necessarily a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, when the bar is as low as it is in Congress, it's pretty easy to exceed the bar. But I'm happy to try to do it. I'm happy to do what I said I would do. And, you know, that's it's always good to come back here at the convention because you get refueled.
So, you know, there's been criticism aimed at you, criticism aimed at a lot of the people here at the convention that you're not doing what the very nice masters in Washington, D.C. and the political elite would want you and want all of us doing. Should we? Are we wrong? Should we just shut up and do what we're told?
Well, here's the way I look at it, right? Congress typically polls what, at about 18% on a good day? 15%, 18, 20?
Just under serial murderers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my question is if I'm against Congress, I'm with 82% of the American people who recognize how bad of a job Congress is doing. Now, joking aside, when we have a situation where we're $35 trillion in debt, where we're racking up $1 trillion of debt every 3 months, where we're going to have $1.1 trillion of interest this year, where we're spending more on interest in the national defense this year, when our borders are wide open and 5.x million people have been released into the United States, when Laken Riley is dead because somebody was paroled into the United States, how much do you want me to keep going down the list? Why would I want to go along with the status quo? Because the status quo is what gave us that. Right. Our hope is coming from the people here in the convention, the people across the country, people who are saying no, Moms for Liberty that are taking school boards back, people who are looking in their local communities to make sure sheriffs and DAs that were winning there. People like Riley Gaines who look at all this and say, you know what? Yeah, that's a dude, and I don't want to swim against a dude. Good for her for saying that, right? The American people are saying enough. So some of us want to go to Washington and actually do what we said we would do. Like, I've got a history of I'm willing to go, okay, here's the off-ramp, let's take it. Let's work together, whether it was the speaker deal last year. Right now I'm working on I'm working on a bill that we hope will get across the line on the International Criminal Court against Israel. And, you know, I'm working with the entire cross-section of the body to do it. But sometimes you just got to say no, right? And I'm happy to say no when we're not doing what we said we would do to all these great people.
So you mentioned a moment ago the essentially wide open border. Congressman Roy, I think that you would almost have to be living on another planet to not recognize that the federal government has absolutely abdicated its responsibilities, and in fact is now working against the people of Texas, against the people of the United States as it relates to controlling and securing our borders. Quite frankly, what can we expect to change before hopefully getting a new president, getting Donald Trump back into the White House? What conceivably could change between now and the end of January?
All right, well, I'm going to try to do this timely because I could talk for an hour or two on this issue alone. But let me first just say that however bad you think the border is, it's worse. Like, literally, it's worse. Every time I talk to somebody down on the border, I mean, right now it's not on the front page of all the news, but there's still 5,000-6,000 people a day that are coming and getting released into the United States. Just the other day, Bill Malugin reported that there were people who crossed in California at 2 o'clock in the morning who were from Iran, Pakistan, I think Indonesia, certain other places around the world from state sponsors of terror, none from Mexico, by the way. All of that's happening in real time. I already explained the issue with Laken Riley. Or take, for example, Kinney County, Texas, right, which is kind of southwest of San Antonio. Right. Little stretch of the border, stretches in about 80, 90 miles or so. And in Kinney County in 2021, the last year where you had the remnants of the Trump administration, they had about 150 crimes they had to prosecute. Last year it was 6,700.
Wow.
Like, this is a massive burden on the people of Texas. We have spent about $13 billion plus of our own money in Texas to do the job of the federal government. I mean, that's not right. A, we should get our money back. B, we should actually take ownership fully of the border. And I applaud the fact that our governor and DPS, they're down there, they're doing a lot of the work that the feds are supposed to do. I'm glad the legislature took some action. There was some resistance in the legislature that was wrong. I think that the executive branch could be even more bold. We need to remember where we are. The Spirit of the Alamo, right down the street from right here. Like, we like to talk about it every year, and March 2nd on Independence Day and go around talking about how great Texans are. Well, let's act like it, right? I mean, this is our border. These are our communities. These are our homes. You asked the question, what should we expect to get done between now and January? Basically nothing. And I'm sorry to say that, but we gave up all our leverage. I somewhat have infamously been in opposition to Republican leadership on this. When Republican leadership tells the American people that we will not send $1 of Ukraine until the border of the United States is secure, I, as a Texan, am duty-bound to hold them to account. And so I was doing that all spring. Why we passed these bills with more Democrat votes than Republican votes, and often without even a majority of Republicans, is beside me. And look, this is why I voted no on tabling the motion to vacate. Now look, Mike Johnson's a friend. I'm working with him right now on the SAVE Act to try to make sure that only citizens can vote. And let me pause and say that is the one thing we can do. We have a bill that I'm the author of that would require documentary proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections throughout the United States of America. We passed it out of committee last week. It'll be on the floor when we get back. I applaud the speaker for moving it, and I will champion him as loudly as I've criticized him if we move a bill like that, which we should move through the halls of Congress.
Does it strike you as off that we are at a point where a member of Congress has to introduce legislation to say only a citizen can vote in a federal election?
It does seem like it's a little off, and it just is a little way of background, because what you'll hear all the liberals who will go out there and say, and the Democrats will say, well, it's already against the law. All right, well, technically that is correct. Under the law, only citizens can vote in federal elections. But do you think that law is being enforced? No. Are there multiple jurisdictions across the country that are rapidly trying to register people to vote in local elections only? Wink, wink. Yes, including the nation's capital. Is it true right now that federal law prohibits and limits the ability of states to get information to check citizenship? Yes, the motor voter bill prohibits it. So much so, Arizona prohibits non-citizens from voting, so they have a separate system for their state elections than they do their federal, so they can fully check citizenship for their state elections. They're prohibited from checking it as fully in federal elections. We need to fix that and require it. Look, I'm a federalist, but this is not a federalism issue. These are federal elections for the President of the United States and for the Congress. We should ensure that only citizens vote in every federal elections across the country.
Outstanding. So Congressman, I'm going to shift gears slightly. We talk about securing the border, but I've begun to worry that we're not doing enough to secure our economy. When you think of the 21st century, whether you're talking about widgets or information or food, all of it ends up requiring energy. Federal policy for the last 20 years has incentivized unreliable sources of power generation, and often to the detriment of reliable things like coal and natural gas, nuclear. What should we be doing to fix this kind of very out of balance system that we've created that is literally on the verge of jeopardizing our economy and jeopardizing people's lives?
So I believe that energy freedom, as I call it, or our ability to get the energy of our choice in Texas and for all American citizens is at stake right now. And if we don't fix it, we're going to have a tough time saving this country. It is that dire. And here's what I mean by that. Like right now, for example, I don't know if people know this, but the Democrats passed a year and a half ago under the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. They passed about $1 trillion of subsidies to subsidize effectively climate agenda policies, green agenda, right? So solar panels, wind, et cetera. Now, most of that money is going to major corporations. 99% of it is going to billion-dollar-plus corporations. Most of that's going to empower China. China, by the way, has 1,100 coal-fired plants. We have about 250. China's building 2 coal-fired plants a week. We're building none. We're not building any nuclear plants. We built 1 in the last 50 years. And so we are entirely now reliant on unreliable energy. You want to know why the Texas grid is struggling? Because we're increasingly reliant on wind and solar. Now look, we've talked about all of the above approach. My former boss and dear friend, Governor Perry, talked a lot about all of the above. I have no problem with there being wind and solar as part of the mix, but I do have a problem when you're going to go litter the landscape of Texas with stuff that, by the way, is its own production of petroleum in order to produce all the windmill parts, freezes when you have a freeze, breaks down, has all sorts of noise pollution, has pollution because you have to bury it in the ground. All of that stuff's put aside, and now you have with this tailpipe rule that the administration just passed last month, or I think they're in the middle of finishing their rulemaking, it will require 2/3 of all fleets in the United States to be electric vehicles by 2032.
Wow.
Do you know how bad that is for you? How bad it is for our economy? It will destroy our economy. We have to reverse that rule. And if you don't reverse that, right now EVs are piling up on auto dealers' parking lots. Of course they are, because they're too expensive. You can't get all the way to Lubbock if you leave Austin, I assure you. You're gonna have to stop and charge like 3 times. And importantly, if you're a plumber and you're trying to just, pay the bills and do your job, you can't afford that. Now that's one other element on top of that, in addition to all the energy crap. All of the regulations on top of that. They now have kill switches in your cars that they're mandating, so that if your eyes do funny things, you might be drunk, so it'll shut your car down. Well, that's expensive, and it might have you on the side of the road in the freezing cold. They're gonna have automatic brakes being required in cars. Well, that's expensive. You wanna know why your windshield costs $1,500 to replace now instead of $250? Because you've got all this technology that's required and built in to windshields. You're being priced out of freedom. And I think that's something we got to remember. We are pricing, it's not just economic growth, it's not just, you're being priced out of freedom, and it's intentional. They want you to be dependent. They want you to rely on government. They want you to be in an electric vehicle they can shut down at will. They want to be able to tax you into oblivion. They want you to have to be beholden to big corporations that they control. We need to rip that back for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, for American citizens. We need a freedom and a bold freedom agenda, and I hope to influence that in the first 100 days of, Lord willing, President Trump's administration.
So what practical things should, the very nice people sitting right here, the folks at the convention, their friends at home, what practical things can they be doing, should they be doing to support the kind of agenda that you're talking about right now?
Well, first of all, if you're not in Texas 21, hold me accountable, hold all your members of Congress and Senate accountable to go to Washington and change all of that. Every single member of the Texas delegation, if we unite, we can make things happen. Different issue, but give me 2 seconds. So we passed H.R. 2 last year, the border security bill that I described before. It's the strongest border security measure we've passed in decades, if not ever. We did that because we united as the Texas delegation, all but one, a certain representative from Texas 23, who didn't sign it, but every member of the Texas delegation signed this plan, the Texas border plan, which became the guts of H.R. 2. So we were able to make clear that we were going to have a border security only bill, not amnesty, not future immigration flow, border security first, and we were able to beat back what the establishment wanted us to do because we'd use the power of the Texas delegation. We need the power of the Texas delegation to be used on everything. Why were Texans voting for the stupid Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act when we didn't provide warrant protection for American citizens? Why were some members of the Texas delegation voting to allow us to continue to fund government, busting the caps, funding $200 million for the FBI, when we could have actually united and blocked that? Why was the Texas delegation voting for Ukraine aid, some members, when we weren't securing our own border, right? We need a united Texas delegation. So hold us all accountable, and then make sure Austin does its damn job. Texas needs to be as strong as Texans like to say it is. Let me say that again. Texas needs to be as strong as we Texans like to brag that it is. We need to actually have parents have choice and ownership over their kids in schools. We need to make sure that we have the grid that you're referring to now that's actually strong and reliable. You can't just make this stuff up as you go. Is the grid going to be there for Texans? Right now, I would argue over the next 20 years, it's not going to be. We have too much unreliable energy and not enough reliable energy. We need a legislative session next spring that gives parental power back, reclaims our streets from criminals and puts them in the hands of law-abiding citizens, protects our rights, strengthens the grid, and yes, secures the border in the absence of the federal government. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm looking in the mirror. My job is to secure the border. But I'm 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3 of that godforsaken hellhole in Washington. So I'm trying to do the best I can, and we need the legislature in Austin to give the wind in our sails to fight up in D.C.
I appreciate what you said there, because very, very often the response that we get from folks like you, guys holding elected office, is, oh, well, if you'll just, tell your elected official to sign on to my whatever, everything will be fine. And I appreciate that you are instead asking for accountability.
Yeah.
We have too little accountability. So many of our problems derive from the fact that we as the people have done a very poor job of being the leaders of our republic. Our system of government was made for an engaged, active, participatory citizenry, and with you guys being the servants.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And their freedom, if we're going to save it, is going to come from the people. It's not going to come from the representatives. The representatives, we will respond to the people. And I promise you, they respond. And one of my favorite moments, favorite things that I've experienced since I've been elected official have been the least pleasant. Right? I mean, I'm serious, because you're engaging with your constituents in a way that it's supposed to be. Like, I endorse Governor DeSantis. I don't shy away from that. I was very public about it. He's a good friend. He's a good man. He's kicking butt in Florida. We'd be a blessed country with him. We'll be a blessed country with Donald Trump. Like, I mean, primaries are primaries. Then you get through the primary, then you go run. I had a lot of constituents who are like, what are you doing? Why are you abandoning Donald Trump? I'm not abandoning Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis is my friend. But we had lots of good dialogue back and forth. That's the way it's supposed to work. They're supposed to chew me out. They're supposed to tell me that they're disagreeing with me. That's okay. And then I'm supposed to take all that in a Republican form of government and then go act on it. And so I try to wake up every day fueled by the people that I represent, not trying to come back and mansplain it to them about, oh, you don't understand. We only had 2-vote majority. I would really do it. I'm with you on all the issues. Trust me. But we only have a razor-thin majority. You got to understand, I'm the most conservative person that you've ever known. Trust me. But I've voted like an idiot for the last 2 decades. Just ignore that. I mean, but that's what we get all the time in Washington.
Outstanding. Well, Chip Roy, thank you for continuing to serve the people of Texas in that horrible hellhole of Washington, D.C.
Happy to do it. God bless.
Thanks, Chip. Thank you all very much.